Hey everybody, and welcome to Q&A Wednesday, where I answer the questions that you have about your health and fitness goals. Now, just fair warning, I'm a little under the weather. Had a really crazy week last week, and I'm the first to tell you that she knows when she overdoes things, we tend to get a little sick. So I'm not like sick, I'm just like nasally. So it's really obnoxious, but I'm here with a great topic. I've actually had multiple people say, wow, yeah, nobody really talks about that. I think that's a really super important topic. So today we're going to talk about whether or not we're all malnutritioned. Now, I know when you think about that, you probably think of the days like in the early history of America, well, not early history, but like in the 1920s, 29, whenever the Great Depression happened, you saw pictures of people who obviously weren't eating enough, and they were, sunken, their faces were sunken in, and, they definitely weren't getting enough food. And that can absolutely 100% be malnutrition. But what I want to talk to you today about is the fact that the majority of our country is technically malnutritioned. So we're going to talk about what that means and what you can do about it, and whether or not you think that you're malnutrition, and if you think you are. And again, we'll talk about what that means in just a second, but what to do about that. So the first thing I want to do is I want to just give you the definition from the American Heritage Dictionary of what they consider malnutrition. And so what they say is that it is poor nutrition because of insufficient or poorly balanced diet. We're going to talk a little bit about that, okay? Or faulty digestion or utilization of foods. We're also going to talk about that. And then down below it also said faulty or imperfect nutrition. And of course, most of you right off the bat can pretty much say that your nutrition is not perfect. So we might be a little bit imperfect. But we're going to talk a couple different things here. Number one, we're going to talk about what that means for the majority of us that think that we're eating enough food. And I know you're going, I eat plenty, trust me, I'm full, or maybe I'm overweight. So how can you say that I'm malnutritioned when I'm overweight? I'm obviously carrying more calories worth of energy in my adipose tissue. What do you mean I'm malnutritioned? So that's what I want to talk about tonight, because malnutrition does not mean that you're not eating enough calories. It can mean that. But in general, what I'm talking about is that you are not eating optimally for your system. And what I mean by that is, don't you want to feel the best you can possibly feel? Don't you want to fight signs of aging and not feel gross as you grow older? Don't you want to be independent for as long as humanly possible? Our body doesn't just run on calories. It runs on nutrients. It runs on obviously the macros, but what about the micronutrients, the things like vitamins and minerals and fiber? And I think that we forget about that because we think, well, we get so focused on calories. Like, I'm eating this many calories, so of course I'm fine. But calories are just one tiny portion of whether or not you're eating enough for you. And we'll talk a little bit about not eating enough, but I really want to talk about whether you're eating enough of the right things. And of course, I know you're going, Melissa, you talk about this all the time. Of course, I'm trying to eat vegetables, but they suck and they don't taste good. And that's the problem that we have, of course, in these days, where the majority of our food is processed, and it comes from these companies who want us to be addicted to their flavors and their food. And so between the mouthfeel and what the way the food tastes, that combination is absolutely 100% addicting. And of course, most of it breaks down into glucose or sugar in your bloodstream almost immediately. And so we become addicted to it. We become addicted to that sugar rush, that rush of dopamine that it provides our bodies. And so that's what we tend to want. So of course you don't want to taste vegetables and healthy, clean food, because your taste buds change. They become addicted to these flavors. So what happens if the majority of people is that they become malnutrition, not because they're not eating enough, but because they're eating a bunch of empty calories and not enough things that actually have vitamins, minerals, and nutrients. Now, I tell people this all the time, and most people think about it for a second, but usually agree with me when I say that people who are overweight or obese are malnutritioned. And what I hear from some people is, well, how is that even possible? Again, they're carrying plenty of energy stored on their body in the form of adipose tissue. The problem is their body's storing it because it has no nutritional value, and so it has to store that somewhere, especially when it is processed sugar and glucose, because too much of that is toxic, right? So unfortunately, most people, now listen, I know that a lot of those products are enriched with vitamins. So even when you look at, say, a Pop-Tart, it says, hey, this product contains vitamin A, vitamin B, blah, blah, blah. When it's synthetic, when it's included in things like that, yeah, that might be the smallest possible needed nutrients, but there's no guarantee that your body uses them, right? Because your body does not actually absorb those efficiently and use them the same way that it will with foods with nutrients from whole food. So that becomes a problem. The other thing is that it's what's optimal for each person is different. You know, what was optimal when we were young is different than when we're in our 60s. It's different than where every part of life, it's different. It's different for men than for women. It's different for different goals and different genetics. Your genetics might determine that you need more of a certain vitamin or mineral over something else, because otherwise you tend to have some of these problems. So again, it's just different for each person. And so you've got to really make sure that you're minimally getting what you need. And we're going to talk about RDAs, or recommended daily allowance, on each of those things in just a second. So that can be an issue with people who, most of us, that's why most of us use some sort of a multivitamin or supplements, because we know that we're not getting the optimal amount of actual nutrients, vitamins and minerals. And so we're trying to replace them somehow. Although realize that your body will use those vitamins and minerals best when they come from food, because that's what our bodies were designed for. All right, number 2, we'll talk a little bit about the inability to digest and absorb those things. Now, you may know someone who has some sort of a digestive issue, like irritable bowel syndrome or Crohn's disease. And of course, there's certain issues with that, but what happens is they get so inflamed that their intestines cannot absorb those nutrients. And so, of course, then they're malnutritioned. And unfortunately, it's becoming extremely common these days, partially because we've done so much damage to our digestive system through certain things like environmental toxins, the foods we eat. I think personally, I believe that's a huge issue that we have. But there really are a lot of toxins and environmental issues that we're all dealing with. We don't always know. And so keep that in mind, that can happen. And unfortunately, and I'm not saying medication isn't important, because I know that medication is important, but it's unfortunate that medication, for the most part, masks the symptoms, but doesn't always take care of the problem. So I do have one quick tip. If you are someone or know someone who is dealing with some sort of digestive issue, so they're not absorbing. All of us have had a situation where, like, wow, I am super bloated. That doesn't feel right. My body's telling me something, but we don't know what to do about it. So that's usually steps to having to figure something out, whether it's a digestive issue itself, or a parasite, or the wrong amount of good versus bad bacteria that can happen, or SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Those are things that definitely can happen. But no matter whatever situation you're dealing with, I highly recommend that above and beyond your primary care provider, which is really important to have and be in contact with and be on the same page, same goals, right? I think it's a good idea to get a functional medical practitioner who is also a doctor, but actually focuses on the root of the problem, not just masking the symptoms. So yes, there's most of the time medication is necessary and appropriate, but I think a lot of times a regular primary care provider, or within the medical profession itself, they are not taught to actually get to the root of the problem most of the time. They're taught how to just deal with the symptoms. And I think that's a huge issue in our health and fitness in this day and age, where we have so much information so readily available to us. We just have the wrong focus. So again, I'm not telling you not to see your doctor, because I think that's super important, but it might be a great idea to have both of those and go back and forth. Realize that you are your own best advocate. You have to make those decisions according to yourself, according to your needs, but make sure that you're getting that information from your doctor. And again, I highly recommend a functional medical practitioner who is a doctor. They're just taking the prevention and solve the problem issue. So, you know, having worked with one before for a situation, I know that, again, they usually have a different focus, and almost every situation has some sort of a protocol that might involve not necessarily as much medicine, but a lot of times there are medical herb supplements, things that have been proven to work well, that in combination can actually help fix the problem, can help you heal. You know, even things like teas, and there's so much more to it. You know, there's a reason why back in the day, the original medicines were plants and herbs, right? Before we came up with pharmaceutical companies that decided that money was more important. So yeah, that's my talk. That's my feel on that one. Okay, so again, I think it's important to make sure you know what's going on and really get a second opinion, exhaust all sources and resources so that you know what's going on. Okay. Number 3, maybe you aren't eating enough. You know, one of the funniest things that I find is when I start working with someone nutritionally, they're eating ridiculously low calories because they're trying to lose weight. And I'm going, okay, But if you need to lose 100 pounds and you're only eating 1,200 calories, by the way, that's starvation level. Where are you going to go when you lose 30 pounds? You can't drop down. The reason people plateau is they're not eating enough to start with. The problem isn't necessarily eating less food or calories, it's eating the right things. So there are times when you are malnutrition because you are not eating enough, because you are dieting. But again, your body does not know the difference between diet and starvation. So you've got to make sure that you're eating enough of the right things, right? This whole, eat less, move more is kind of stupid. I'm not saying that you shouldn't eat less garbage and move more if you're being sedentary. But it's too vague. There's just not enough information there. You need to eat more healthy foods that have nutrients in them, and do things to just help your body process. Okay. I think that's super important. So again, talking about the foods that are enriched with vitamins and minerals, again, they came up with that solution because so many people were struggling to get even just the recommended minimum levels. And so they started to include them in foods that they knew that people would eat that aren't the healthiest options. There are such things as food deserts in our country where people can't even get to a grocery store to get real whole food. And so they're getting it down on the corner at 7-Eleven. And so if they're getting a Pop-Tart, they need those enriched vitamins and minerals because they're not getting it anywhere else. It's just not optimal, which is a problem. So, all right. So really quickly, I want to talk about RDA, which is recommended daily allowance, which is something that our government has come up with some guidelines, some dietary guidelines. The problem with this, and I'm going to read this to you really quick so you understand what I'm talking about. The problem is that, again, they're not talking optimal. They're talking minimal. And they're talking for healthy people. So again, let me read this really quick. It says a recommended daily allowance is the average daily intake level that is sufficient, not optimal, sufficient to meet the nutrient requirements of nearly all healthy individuals. Here's my issue with that. If 88% of our country is metabolically unhealthy, and that's what the statistic is, 88% of our country is metabolically unhealthy, then the RDAs don't even meet that. So again, in order to get the right amount of the nutrients that you need, it has to be optimal for you, and it's gotta be, the minimal, again, is just that. That's like passing my doctor's exam, which I haven't done and I'm not gonna do, by the minimal requirements. I'm still a doctor, but it's just minimally, right? So again, you really want optimal for you. That's super important. So here's my suggestion if that's been a real struggle. Again, this is only going to work as well as what you put into it, but I don't remember if I don't think that it tells you whether or not it's a synthetic requirement or if it's a superfood. I recommend that you get the majority of your actual nutrients, minerals, vitamins, all of that from real food. Your body will absolutely use it better. That's how our bodies were designed, right? Since the beginning of time. So there is something, it's a free app that a good friend of mine, Emily Nielsen, taught me about. It's called the Chronometer. It's a little different than say MyFitnessPal or different ways to track your food. It's more based on what nutrients you're getting. So you can input your food throughout the day, and it will tell you you're getting this level of vitamin B12, you're getting this level of vitamin A, you're getting this level of fiber, you're getting this level, and it will tell you according to your age, gender, and approximate goals, minimally what you should be getting. Now, it's not perfect, but it at least gives you a good idea if you're getting some of those minimal amounts of those nutrients that you really need to function optimally. Because, hey, I'm not just here for us to just live well. I want us to live optimal, right? I think that's super important, and I'm just devastated to see the good portion of our country that is really dealing with metabolic issues because I think it's preventable and it's fixable, and we're just not talking about it. So hopefully that helps. Maybe you know somebody that could benefit from this. Pass this information on. You can also, just send them a link. That's a great thing. And if you're missing out on my Facebook Lives on Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, or my Meals with Melissa on Saturday mornings, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, you can also see all of these uploaded to my YouTube channel. It's under Fillmore Fitness, so you can find them there. If you have any questions, please ask. I get my very best ideas from you guys. You can comment below, or you can message me directly through Facebook Messenger. I love it. I love to talk. Just don't be creepy. Yeah. Anyway, have an incredible day, you guys. I love y'all. Please, let's be happy and healthy. Have a good night.